The chamber of the Galactic Council floated high above a dying star, surrounded by black space and cold silver stations that stretched like endless rings around it. Inside the giant spherical hall, the air felt heavy, thick with the weight of a decision that would change the shape of the galaxy. Every star system had sent their ambassadors. Some stood tall in their glowing robes. Some hovered in metallic shells. Some clicked, hissed, or whispered through strange tongues. But none spoke of mercy. Everyone knew why they were here. Earth was on trial. Humanity's name was already written on the last page of this chapter. The Speaker of the Council, a tall being with silver skin and eyes like frozen steel, raised a hand slowly. Blue light spread through the chamber like a pulse. In the center of the room, a single image formed in the air, Earth, small and blue, spinning quietly in the dark. It looked peaceful, almost too peaceful for what was about to happen. The speaker's voice echoed like a blade dragging against stone. The proposal: to exile the human race from the Galactic Union, to cut trade, to remove protection, to end all ties, effective immediately. A long silence followed. It wasn't hesitation. It was theater. Everyone already knew how they would vote. The first ambassador, a massive reptilian creature with long curved horns, lifted its scaled hand without a word. Then another. Then another. Wings, claws, metallic limbs, gelatinous arms. One by one they rose like a cold tide. No voice spoke against it. Not a single ally stood. One by one, the lights turned red. Humanity's exile was sealed not with war, not with fire, but with quiet betrayal. The human seat at the council was empty. It had been empty for years. Humanity had stopped showing up when it realized no one there wanted to hear them. The speaker lowered his hand and said the words that echoed across 1,000 systems. The vote is unanimous. Earth is exiled. Any human vessel entering council space will be destroyed. Any ally of humanity will face the same fate. Humanity is no longer welcome. A low wave of applause filled the chamber. Not loud, but sharp. Some ambassadors laughed quietly. Some exchanged greedy whispers about trade routes and empty colonies. They saw a planet, not a people. They saw resources, not history. They believed humanity would beg. They believed Earth would fall to its knees. But they didn't know. Humanity had already moved its hand. Far away, on the frozen moon of Europa, beneath layers of thick ice and crushing pressure, massive black ships were already moving. They were built in the dark, with no signatures, no broadcast signals, no flags. They were not meant to be seen. Their sharp frames cut through the ice tunnels as silent engines came alive like sleeping giants breathing their first breath. No light touched their hulls. No scan could detect them. Humanity had built them while the galaxy laughed. They called them the ghost fleets. The moment the speaker finished the vote, those ships began to slip into deep space. They used routes no one else knew existed. Black corridors carved through forgotten jump points and old war scars. They disappeared without sound, like shadows sinking into shadows. No alarms. No broadcasts. No threats. Just movement. Back in the council chamber, the speaker lifted his chin proudly. Let this day be remembered. The galaxy is safer without the human race. More applause. But not everyone clapped. Among the sea of faces, a few old ambassadors remained quiet. They had seen humanity fight before. They had seen what happened when humans were cornered. One of them, a small, bird-like figure with bright gold eyes, whispered to her aide, "They will not take this quietly." Her aide shifted nervously. "They can't fight all of us." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Thousands of light years away, deep beneath the surface of Earth, human leaders watched the vote through encrypted feeds. The war room was built from dark steel, silent except for the hum of old machines. Men and women in plain uniforms stood shoulder to shoulder. There were no tears, no shouts, no fear. They had expected this. Humanity had always known it would come. The galaxy never trusted them. They were the unpredictable ones. The survivors. And survivors never beg. Admiral Kane stood at the center of the room, his gray eyes locked on the glowing map above the table. Red dots spread across council systems like seeds waiting to grow. "They think they exiled us," he said in a low voice that cut through the silence like steel. "But in truth, they just set us free." Officers stepped forward, giving reports with cold precision. Fleet 1 had already crossed the gate. Fleet 2 was deep in shadow. Fleet 3's engines were warming. The Admiral didn't need speeches. He just nodded. "Then we move now. Before their celebration ends. Before their fear wakes up." The aide beside him hesitated. "And the Council?" The Admiral's voice hardened. "The Council will learn what silence feels like when it comes from us." Across the galaxy, alien news channels screamed headlines about the day of safety. Merchants celebrated. Empires smiled. Citizens cheered in the streets. But their stars didn't see what was hiding in the black. The human fleet stretched like quiet wolves circling a campfire, their eyes locked on prey that didn't know it was being watched. Humanity didn't need to roar. They didn't need to show their strength. The strongest move in the galaxy wasn't power. It was silence. And humanity had mastered it. In the dark of space, one ship tilted slightly, aligning itself with an invisible point beyond council borders. Inside, soldiers in black armor stood at attention. No music. No speeches. Just the sound of engines burning like a quiet heartbeat. One young soldier whispered to another, "They think they won." The older soldier smirked. "Let them. It makes it easier." The Speaker of the Council raised a toast in the chamber. Crystal glasses clinked. 1,000 light-years away, humanity's shadows moved like ghosts. The vote was done. The exile was declared. But the real story hadn't even started yet. Humanity didn't beg. Humanity didn't wait. Humanity acted. And while the galaxy celebrated, it didn't even realize the wolves were already inside the forest. The galaxy celebrated Earth's exile as if it had defeated an enemy, but in reality, it had only created a storm it couldn't see. While the Council's grand chamber filled with false security, humanity's shadow spread quietly through the cold dark of space. The Silent Fleet, a name never spoken in public but carved into the minds of those who built it, moved through the black like a living creature. It wasn't one fleet but many, divided, hidden, silent. Each warship was forged in secret stations buried under ice, hidden in asteroid fields, or built deep beneath abandoned colonies no one cared to scan. For decades, while the galaxy argued over trade and laws, humanity prepared. They never trusted the Council. They never forgot how the galaxy treated them. So when the exile vote came, they didn't flinch. They simply opened the gates they had already built. The Silent Fleet wasn't made for parades or displays of power. There were no bright lights on their hulls, no banners, no signals announcing their arrival. Their design was cold and sharp, covered in black plating that absorbed sensor signals. If an alien ship passed near them, it would detect nothing but empty space. Each warship carried its own gravity core, designed to move without standard jump lanes, using human-built routes no one else understood. Every ship was connected, not by radio or light, but by something the galaxy hadn't cracked, quantum ghost links. No trace, no delay, no leaks. Humanity moved like a shadow no one could follow. Commanders across the fleet received only one signal, and that signal was a single line: "The vote is done. Proceed." No speeches. No explanations. Every officer already knew what that meant. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. These weren't politicians. They weren't diplomats. They were ghosts. The first fleet drifted through the black, engines silent, passing through old wreck fields from forgotten wars. Their ships blended into the graveyard, indistinguishable from the broken remains around them. No one scanned. No one looked. The galaxy thought humanity was broken, not preparing. The second fleet moved through the shadow between stars, using a deep corridor known only to a handful of engineers on Earth. It was so cold and black that even light didn't travel there the same way. The ships seemed to melt into the void, becoming nothing more than a shiver in space. The third fleet, the largest, slid through the outer rings of Council space, right under the noses of alien patrols who didn't even realize what was passing beneath them. Inside the command ship Erebus, Admiral Kane stood in the dark control room, surrounded by silent officers. The bridge didn't glow like other warships. Every screen was set to minimum light. Every system ran in quiet mode. Only soft white indicators blinked slowly. Kane's voice came out low, like gravel scraping metal. Fleet 1 has reached its shadow position. Fleet 2 is aligned with the black corridor. Fleet 3 is drifting past their border stations. They still don't know. His second-in-command leaned forward, watching the holographic projection of Council territory. They think we're hiding. Kane didn't smile, but his eyes sharpened. We're not hiding. We're watching. On dozens of worlds that had voted for Earth's exile, life went on without worry. Crowded markets, shining cities, and starports hummed with trade. They thought exile meant safety. They thought humanity was far away, powerless. But above those worlds, far beyond the range of their cheap scanners, black dots hung in the void, unmoving, patient. Those dots were warships. They didn't need to fire. They didn't need to threaten. Just being there was enough. The humans aboard them waited, listening to silent orders that only they could hear. Inside one of the ships, a young pilot named Lyra stared through the dark window. All she saw was emptiness, but she knew hundreds of ships floated with her, invisible, like wolves in a fog. Her fingers traced the edge of the console. She whispered to herself, "They think we're gone. But we're everywhere." No one responded. The bridge crew spoke only when needed. Silence was their shield. Silence was their power. The Council's military network was fast, loud, and predictable. Every move they made passed through the same relay systems, the same predictable orbits. Humanity didn't use that. Humanity had grown used to being underestimated. They had learned to live in the cracks of the galaxy. Now they used those cracks to surround their enemies. In the central command bunker beneath Earth's crust, the old generals watched the fleet's movements like a silent storm spreading. One of the strategists whispered, "They're celebrating right now. They think they're safe." Admiral Kane's voice came through the ghost line. "Good. Let them laugh. Let them sleep. When they open their eyes, they'll already be surrounded." The silent fleet didn't just travel through space. It became part of it. On Council scanners, it didn't even exist. The galaxy was blind. And humanity liked it that way. In every alien capital that voted for exile, above every powerful world, near every trade route, a human ship now floated unseen. Not to strike yet. No. They were patient. Humanity had learned patience through centuries of war, famine, and betrayal. And now, that patience was their most dangerous weapon. While the galaxy slept, the hunters were already in position. The galaxy woke to a strange silence before the storm. On 1,000 alien worlds, stars rose over calm cities, ships moved through clean trade lanes, and people believed the exile of Earth had made their lives safer. The Council's media machines spread their proud message across every system. Humanity had been banished, and the galaxy was finally united. But far beyond their borders, in the deep cold black, humanity had already chosen its first move. At precisely the same moment on every world, at every station, at every military base and council ship, the same strange interference appeared. Screens flickered. Signal lines bent. Communication grids stuttered. The galaxy's most powerful networks, built by hundreds of species over centuries, began to crack like glass touched by invisible hands. Commanders of alien fleets rushed to their stations, thinking it was just another power failure or solar flare. But then came the sound. No, not a sound, a voice. A human voice. Calm. Controlled. Cold. It wasn't a broadcast through any official channel. It came through every channel. Civilian lines. Military frequencies. Encrypted networks. Even old dead satellites that hadn't worked in decades. A woman's voice, steady as steel, filled every corner of the galaxy. "You exiled us. That was your choice. What happens next is ours." No one could trace the signal. No one could jam it. It bypassed everything they built. On alien worlds, citizens froze in their tracks. In shining city towers, Leaders stared at screens that turned black except for those words. In deep mines, workers heard the same voice echoing through old comm lines. Even ships that were light years away, beyond council relays, received it at the exact same time. It wasn't just a message. It was a demonstration. Inside the council chamber, panic burned through the seats like fire through dry leaves. Ambassadors shouted over each other, their calm arrogance from the exile vote gone. Where is it coming from? Shut it down. Why can't our systems trace it? Technicians slammed their hands against control panels, but their screens only showed static and one blinking line. What happens next is ours. The speaker stood frozen for a moment. His silver skin reflected the dark glow of dead monitors. He had mocked humanity during the vote, called them impulsive, weak, chaotic. But the voice he had just heard wasn't weak. It wasn't desperate. It was something worse. It was patient. It was confident. It was the voice of someone who was already inside their walls. On the trade world of Serin, the markets were packed with millions. Merchants shouted, ships flew above, lights blinked in the sky. Then suddenly every display turned black. The loud marketplace went silent. The same voice spoke, clear and soft, but it felt like it echoed inside every skull. One merchant dropped his goods and whispered, "They're still here." Panic followed like a wave. On the military fortress of Jeraprime, the most secure base in the eastern quadrant, admirals and soldiers ran to their defense terminals. They fired signal scramblers, shut down external comms, and tried to lock the system from the inside. But the voice didn't stop. It grew louder. Not in sound, but in weight. It was like it wasn't coming through machines anymore. It was everywhere at once. In orbit around those same worlds, the silent fleet moved closer. Not visible, not traceable, but present. They were positioned with precision, close enough to watch everything, far enough to remain ghosts. Every captain sat in their dark bridge, watching council systems drown in their own fear. No one in the fleet spoke. There was no need to. This was their first message, and it had landed exactly as planned. Back on Earth, Admiral Kane stood in the war room with his hands behind his back, staring at the map of blinking council systems. One after another, green lights turned red as the broadcast spread. Officers around him didn't cheer. There was no celebration. This wasn't revenge yet. This was just a reminder. A warning that humanity had not disappeared. A shadow that no wall could keep out. Kane's voice was low, calm. "They're listening now. Good." An officer leaned closer to the main console. "Sir, every world received the message. No resistance. No blocks. They can't even find the source." Kane didn't look away from the map. They won't. And that's the point. Fear grows fastest in the dark. On alien news channels, the panic turned to chaos. Rumors spread at light speed. Some said Earth had built a weapon that could control minds. Some said humans had taken over their satellites. Some said fleets of invisible warships were already above their skies. No one knew what was real. And that was exactly how humanity designed it. Across thousands of systems, power grids began to flicker, not to damage but to remind. Military bases received short bursts of encrypted images, shadows of human warships, old battlefields, and a single burning Earth emblem. Civilian broadcasts glitched with flashes of the same symbol. The galaxy didn't just hear humanity's voice. It felt its presence pressing down like a cold hand. In the Council's war center, the speaker finally shouted, "Activate full security network. Lock all defense protocols. Find them." But his words shook with something new. Fear. For the first time, the most powerful seat in the galaxy realized that Exile had not removed humanity. It had only unchained it. In the blackness of space, Lyra sat in her pilot seat inside the lead ship of Fleet One, staring at the endless stars. She heard the soft buzz in her earpiece as the broadcast ended. "They are panicking," someone on the comm said. Lyra smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was quiet, sharp, knowing. "Good. Let them panic. We haven't even started." On every world, that calm voice left a scar. A single sentence that felt like a shadow breathing on their necks. What happens next is ours. The galaxy had celebrated Earth's exile, but in that moment, everyone, ambassadors, soldiers, merchants, children, understood something terrifying. Humanity hadn't been exiled. Humanity had gone quiet. And nothing is more dangerous in the dark than something quiet and waiting. The first planet to fall was not one of the weak border colonies but a proud and powerful world, one that had raised its hand quickly during the exile vote. It was called Virelia, a place covered in silver towers and golden bridges, a world that believed it could never be touched. Its skies were guarded by rings of patrol fleets, its surface filled with defense grids and deep bunkers. The people of Virelia laughed when they heard the human broadcast. They told themselves it was just noise, a desperate scream from a race too small to matter. They went back to their markets, their offices, their polished streets and bright lights. They didn't know that above their calm blue skies, something had already arrived. The silent fleet was waiting like a shadow stretching over their entire planet. The human ships had been drifting for hours in complete silence. No engine flare. No radar signature. Just black hulls blending with the dark. The fleet did not come to fight a battle. It came to deliver a message the galaxy would never forget. At the exact moment when Virelia's news networks were broadcasting the speaker's speech about the new era of safety, every light in orbit around the planet went out. Patrol ships lost power mid-flight. Engines died like candles crushed under wind. Communication towers on the surface began to flicker. 1 second the world was bright, glowing like a jewel in space. The next second it was dark. Not damaged. Just off. In the control room of the Planetary Defense Network, alarms screamed as technicians tried to reboot systems. Primary reactor offline, someone shouted. Backup failing. Signal loss across all military satellites. Panic hit fast because it was not supposed to be possible. Virelia was the most fortified world in its sector. It had never gone dark before. Even during wars, even during cosmic storms, something always stayed online. But now everything was dead at the same time. Their sky was blind. Their weapons were silent. In orbit, the human flagship Erebus hovered in the black like a beast watching its prey. Admiral Kane stood in the shadowed command room with his hands behind his back. In front of him floated a holographic image of Virelia, spinning slowly, its bright surface fading into a dull gray as its power grid collapsed. All systems down, the operations officer whispered. Kane didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just gave the next order. Send the message. On the ground, inside the Council's regional palace in the capital city, alien governors stood around a glowing table yelling at each other. The walls shook as emergency sirens wailed. Every screen went black, replaced by a single image. The emblem of Earth, burned into the center of the display like a scar. A deep voice, calm and slow, filled every corner of the palace. This is exile. Nothing more. No demands. No threats. No gunfire. Just those 3 words. Outside the palace, people rushed through the streets in fear as lights blinked out one district at a time. Trains stopped on their tracks. Ships fell from the sky like dead birds. The once proud Virelian Defense Force scrambled to launch emergency drones, but they didn't even lift off the ground. It was like the planet had been unplugged from reality. On the Council homeworld, ambassadors received the emergency transmission. At first, they thought it was a glitch, but then they saw the raw feed. A live view of Virelia, dark and quiet, with no signs of resistance, no communication, no movement in orbit. The planet that once boasted it could fight entire fleets alone was now a silent rock. The speaker's hand shook as he gripped the edge of his desk. This can't be real, he whispered, but his voice betrayed the truth. It was real, and he knew it. In the shadows above Virelia, human warships held their position. They didn't fire a single shot. They didn't destroy anything. Their silence was louder than war. Every alien fleet commander across the galaxy watched the feed with wide eyes, and a single fear grew inside their hearts. If this could happen to Virelia, it could happen to anyone. Lyra sat in the pilot seat of her attack ship, eyes locked on the planet's fading lights. Her finger hovered above the fire control, but she didn't need to press anything. She whispered softly, "They're already broken." Her commander replied through the comm with the same cold calm. "We don't need to fight them. We just show them they're not safe." Across the galaxy, panic began to spread faster than news could travel. Planetary leaders called the council, demanding protection. Merchants pulled ships out of trade routes. Civilian fleets locked themselves in orbit. Fear crept into the cracks of every empire. This wasn't war as they understood it. It wasn't a battle they could see. This was a shadow that could fall on anyone at any time without warning. In the council's war chamber, the speaker slammed his hand against the table. "Where is the human fleet?" The military commander's voice cracked. "We don't know. They're invisible on every scan. No ship signatures. No jump logs. Nothing." "Then find them," the speaker roared, but deep down he knew it was useless. In the command room aboard Erebus, Admiral Kane watched the silent world on the holographic screen. The power grids of Virelia had collapsed perfectly, like a controlled fall. It wasn't brute force. It was precision. It was a message. Humanity could turn off their entire civilization without lifting a weapon. He turned to his officers, his voice low and even. "This is only the beginning." In the dark streets of Virelia, children clung to their parents as the night stretched longer than usual. The stars above felt closer, like something was watching. And something was. Thousands of human soldiers and ships hovered just beyond sight, unseen but impossible to forget. The galaxy thought it had exiled humanity. But the first world had fallen without a single shot fired, and the galaxy now understood what exile truly meant. It wasn't humanity that had been cast out. It was the galaxy that had just opened its doors to fear. The fall of Virelia hit the Galactic Council like a blade sliding into soft flesh. The proud world that had once stood as an example of strength and loyalty to the Council now floated in silence, dark and cold, stripped of its defenses without a single shot being fired. The moment the first report came through the secure channels, the ambassadors who had once raised their hands so easily to exile Earth fell into a storm of shouting and fear. The great chamber that had echoed with confidence during the vote was now filled with trembling voices. Some shouted to prepare for war, others begged to open diplomatic channels, and some, their faces pale and rigid, sat in silence because they knew there was nothing to negotiate with ghosts. The speaker slammed his hand down on the console, his silver skin trembling. "Order! Silence!" But silence did not come. 100 alien delegates yelled over each other, their words cutting through the air like blades. "We must strike now." "Strike what? We can't find them. We need to send fleets to protect the core worlds. We should have never exiled them. It's too late now." The speaker shouted louder, "We are the Galactic Council. We control this galaxy. We will not bow to one planet." But even as he spoke, he could feel the tremor in his own voice. The Council's war room, hidden beneath layers of reinforced steel and energy shielding, came alive with emergency alerts. Holographic maps flickered to life, showing thousands of red signals spreading slowly across trade routes, mining stations, and colony worlds. The signals weren't attacks. They were disturbances, ghost signatures, distorted sensor readings, fleets that no one could see but everyone felt. It was as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath. Every system that had voted against Earth began reporting strange activity. Power spikes, signal loops, shadow readings. Humanity wasn't striking everywhere at once. They were letting the galaxy feel the weight of their presence before the real blow. A senior general stepped forward, his voice shaking. "We've increased sensor sweeps tenfold. There's nothing to detect. It's like they're everywhere and nowhere at the same time." The speaker glared at him. "That's impossible. No fleet can hide from the entire galaxy." The general swallowed hard. "No fleet but theirs. They've been building this for years. We were too busy controlling trade and borders to see it coming." Another voice rose, a nervous ambassador with insectoid eyes. "Then what do we do?" No one answered. In a dark corner of the chamber, a young delegate whispered, "This is what they planned. From the start. They let us think we won. His whisper spread like infection through the others. Some tried to deny it, but deep down, they all knew. Humanity had not been caught off guard by the exile vote. Humanity had prepared for it long before anyone in the council even spoke the word exile. News feeds from across the galaxy poured into the council screens. Entire trade routes were frozen. Civilian fleets refused to leave orbit. Markets collapsed overnight as merchants panicked. Colonies that had once laughed at Earth's defiance now begged the council for protection. But the council could not protect them from something it could not even see. No one could predict where the next silence would fall. The terror of not knowing was worse than any weapon. The speaker turned to the defense ministers. Deploy the fleets to key systems. Show them we are still in control. Admirals nodded, and massive alien fleets launched from dozens of worlds. Battleships, cruisers, and carriers spread across the stars, but every one of them moved without direction. They were searching for shadows. The first fleet to reach the border of Virelia found nothing but the cold blackness of space. No human ship. No sign of an attack. No sound. Just a silent planet that refused to answer. The fleet sent a transmission to the council. There is nothing here. The speaker's face turned hard, but his hands clenched tightly under the desk. Fear was spreading faster than orders. Ambassadors whispered among themselves, already talking about abandoning the council to protect their own homeworlds. Old alliances cracked like thin glass under pressure. Empires that had stood together for centuries began to look at each other with suspicion, each one wondering who would be next to fall. On the council's upper floor, security screens flickered with hundreds of messages. Civilian protests were breaking out on core worlds. People shouted in the streets, terrified of an invisible enemy that could arrive without warning. Families fled cities, filling spaceports with desperate crowds. In the skies above, defense satellites rotated nervously, firing scans into the dark, finding nothing but more silence. Meanwhile, on the human flagship Erebus, Admiral Kane stood at the center of the bridge, his arms behind his back as the holographic projection of Council space shifted slowly. The red dots marking alien fleets moved like blind insects, scattering without purpose. His officers stood silent, each watching the growing chaos with steady eyes. Kane spoke softly, not as a man celebrating victory, but as someone stating a fact. They're breaking themselves before we even touch them. Lyra, sitting in the command nest of her attack ship, listened to the intercepted council chatter. It was frantic, confused, desperate. She exhaled slowly, feeling the cold calm settle in her chest. "They're fighting shadows," she muttered. The officer beside her replied, "We are the shadows." Back in the council chamber, the speaker tried to restore order. "This is temporary. We are the strongest force in the galaxy. We will find them." But even as he spoke, the massive screen behind him glitched again, the council's proud crest flickering into the glowing emblem of Earth, the same silent mark that had appeared on Virelia before it fell dark. The room froze. No alarms. No warnings. Just that symbol, burning into their vision like a quiet threat. The speaker's voice faltered for the first time. "They're inside the network." Another ambassador whispered, "They're inside everything." Fear was no longer outside the chamber. It was inside every mind, every corner, every heartbeat. The council had built an empire on control, and humanity had just taken control away without firing a single shot. In the void beyond their reach, the silent fleet drifted like a storm waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Humanity didn't need to declare war. The galaxy was already at war with its own fear. And for the first time in centuries, the mighty Galactic Council realized what it felt like to be small. The council chamber no longer looked like the throne of a proud empire but like a cage filled with panicked animals. The same ambassadors who had once mocked Earth now sat pale and silent, their hands shaking, their voices broken. Virelia was still dark. Patrol fleets had found nothing but silence around its orbit. Entire communication lines across multiple sectors were unstable. Power grids flickered on core worlds. Merchants no longer trusted their routes. Civilian fleets refused to leave safe ports. Trade, the lifeblood of the council, was dying slowly. And all of this was happening without a single human shot fired. Fear was the weapon, and humanity wielded it like a blade that couldn't be seen. The speaker stood in the center of the chamber, his silver skin dull under the flickering lights. "We will not lose control of this galaxy," he said, but no one believed him anymore, not even he himself. One ambassador finally stood up, his voice shaking. "We have no control. They're everywhere, and we can't find them. They could be right above our homeworlds, and we'd never know." Another shouted, "They must be forced to the table. We cannot survive like this. Our fleets are blind, our systems weak, and our people terrified." More joined in. "We should negotiate before they destroy us completely." "No," others yelled. "If we give them anything, the council loses everything." The chamber erupted again into a storm of screaming, desperate creatures clinging to the illusion of power. The speaker slammed his hand on the console. "Enough!" His voice echoed through the chamber like a gunshot. For the first time, the room fell quiet. His eyes scanned the delegates, and he saw something that had not been there during the exile vote: fear and respect for the enemy they had underestimated. "We will send them a message," the speaker said. "We will offer terms. If humanity accepts, we end this shadow war. If they refuse, then at least we tried." He did not say what they all thought, that there was nothing they could do if humanity refused. Across the galaxy, encrypted channels that had been locked for years lit up. For the first time since the exile vote, the Council sent a direct transmission to Earth. It was a message wrapped in diplomatic language but soaked in desperation. "We acknowledge the recent incidents. We propose discussions to restore stability. The Council is willing to reconsider the terms of exile in the interest of peace and galactic security." On Earth, in the war room beneath layers of metal and silence, Admiral Kane read the message with steady eyes. Officers waited for his command, their faces calm but hard. This was the moment humanity had expected. The Council, the mighty power that once controlled everything, was now asking for peace. Kane leaned forward slightly, the glow of the holographic stars reflecting in his eyes. "They finally realized," he said. Lyra stood among the other commanders, listening as his voice spread through the silent fleet. "But we're not here to negotiate for scraps. We're here to make sure they never forget who they tried to exile." The room was quiet, not because they feared him, but because they all shared the same fire in their blood. Humanity had been pushed out, mocked, treated like an infestation. Now the galaxy was learning that humans were not the kind you exile. They were the kind that came back from the dark. The reply sent back to the Council was short. There were no titles, no formal greetings, just a line of text and a single voice. "You wanted us gone, so we left. But you will not forget us." That was it. No promise, no compromise. It was not a conversation. It was a verdict. When the speaker received the reply, he read it twice, then a third time, his hands growing colder with each word. The silence in the chamber was heavier than any explosion. Ambassadors stared at the display, their faces blank. They had reached out expecting at least some form of talk, a chance to beg for mercy. But the reply carried none of that. It carried something worse. Finality. Council fleets continued to move blindly across the stars, trying to look strong. But deep inside, even the admirals knew the truth. They weren't hunting the silent fleet. They were being watched by it. Ships disappeared into the void without distress calls. Power grids kept failing without a single missile being fired. No enemy to shoot. No target to aim at. Just a shadow breathing down their necks. On the core worlds, panic turned to riots. Citizens no longer believed the Council's speeches. They whispered about invisible human ships above their skies. Every flickering light, every small blackout was enough to make cities freeze in fear. In some places, planetary governors cut ties with the Council entirely, hoping to make their own peace before it was too late. The once unbreakable alliance of species was tearing itself apart under the weight of one enemy they couldn't see. Admiral Kane watched these reports like a man watching a clock. "They're crumbling faster than I thought," one of the strategists said quietly. Kane's voice was calm. Fear is always faster than bullets. Lyra sat alone in her ship, staring out into the black sea of stars. Her hands rested on the controls, but she didn't need to move. No human ship needed to move now. The Council had made its choice when it exiled Earth. And now, even when they begged for peace, it didn't matter. Humanity had already stepped beyond them. In the Council chamber, some begged to surrender. Others shouted to fight. But beneath it all, a quiet truth spread like smoke through the room. They were not the ones making choices anymore. Humanity was. The moment they voted to exile Earth, they handed the future away. Now, they waited for whatever came next. And humanity wasn't rushing. No, they were patient. The most dangerous kind of enemy is the one who doesn't hurry. The one who knows time is already on their side. The fleets of the Galactic Council wandered through the dark like lost creatures, powerful in numbers but blind without purpose. The ambassadors no longer spoke with pride, the admirals no longer barked orders with confidence, and the merchants no longer believed in the promise of safety. The galaxy had changed. It had not been conquered by warships or burned by bombs. It had been taken apart by silence, by fear, by something it could not see. Humanity had not launched a single massive battle, but their shadow stretched over every system like a storm cloud that never moved away. And the worst part was not what the galaxy could see, it was what it couldn't. Beyond the edge of known space, past the farthest star charts the Council had ever drawn, something vast and silent was growing. In the black between stars, human fleets were not scattered and hiding as the Council believed. They were building. Massive black shipyards floated around dead suns, protected by energy fields no alien sensor could breach. Black steel giants, warships larger than anything the Council had ever produced, were being assembled piece by piece with precision. No banners, no diplomacy, no allies. Only humans working together with one goal: to create something that didn't need permission anymore. Earth had not been exiled into weakness. It had stepped into freedom. Inside one of those shipyards, the newly formed human capital ship Leviathan floated like a beast carved from the void. Its hull was layered in adaptive plates that absorbed sensor waves. Its engines were silent but carried enough power to cross entire sectors without detection. Thousands of soldiers, scientists, and engineers moved inside, their steps calm and focused. No one questioned orders because no one doubted the mission. Humanity had learned a lesson long ago. The galaxy would never trust them, so they would trust themselves. Admiral Kane stood on the upper deck of the Leviathan's command center, staring at the star map stretching before him. Red lines marked Council routes, green marked neutral paths, and a web of black routes showed humanity's network. Routes only they knew, carved through forgotten jump points, dead space, and abandoned sectors. A single glance was enough to see that while the Council's fleets patrolled known space like fools chasing ghosts, humanity's fleets already surrounded the galaxy like a hunter circling its prey. "They still think we're scattered," Kane said quietly. His second-in-command replied, "They're looking in the light. We live in the dark." Kane nodded slowly. "Exactly where we belong." Back in the Council chamber, cracks widened. Planets that once swore loyalty to the Council began to pull away. Some tried to sign secret pacts. Others fell silent out of fear. The Speaker sat alone in the Great Hall, staring at the emblem of Earth flashing on their central monitor. Weeks had passed since the last contact. No negotiations. No demands. Just silence. The Speaker finally understood what humanity had done. They had not struck the Council down. They had left it to rot. The Council had always believed that power came from control, from rules and borders. Humanity had proven that real power came from taking control away. On thousands of alien worlds, citizens lived under invisible pressure. The night sky felt different. Even without proof, they all felt something watching from above. Trade convoys refused to travel through outer lanes. Military fleets stayed close to their own homeworlds. Even the most powerful admirals no longer dared to push beyond their territory. The galaxy was shrinking in on itself. Humanity had become the storm at the edge of every map. In the darkness of the Human War Council, leaders from colonies, fleets, and hidden stations gathered as equals. There were no politicians wearing shining robes, no council speeches, no promises. Just hard, clear decisions. The council has started tearing itself apart, one of the strategists said. Their outer sectors are rebelling. Their fleets are too stretched. They can't protect anyone anymore. Kane leaned forward over the table. They exiled us to make themselves safer. But they only built us an empire they can't see, can't touch, can't control. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of something final. Let them keep looking for a war we won't give them. Lyra stood on the bridge of her attack cruiser, watching the glowing trails of human fleets moving through black corridors of space. It was beautiful in a quiet, dangerous way. No cheering, no victory songs. Just the steady hum of engines and the knowledge that they were already winning without ever firing a single decisive shot. She whispered softly, "They think we're gone. But we're everywhere." Reports came in from across council space. World after world cut ties, withdrawing from council rule. Trade networks shattered. Borders became meaningless lines. Without a visible enemy, the council couldn't rally its fleets. Without trust, their unity dissolved like sand in water. Humanity had become the myth they once feared, the shadow they could not stop. The speaker looked at the reports and finally lowered his head. "We should never have exiled them," he whispered to no one. At the edge of the galaxy, human warships drifted in a massive formation so large it stretched like a black river across the stars. It was not a fleet built for conquest. It was a fleet built to make sure no one ever touched humanity again. Above the fleet, the holographic emblem of Earth pulsed faintly, a reminder of what had been done, and of what would never be repeated. Admiral Kane turned to his officers. "The galaxy will never look at us the same again," one of them said. Kane's voice was steady. "Good. Let them look into the dark and wonder if we're there. Let them fear their own skies." Lyra's voice came through the comm, calm but sharp. "We don't need to strike. We already changed everything." Kane nodded. "Exactly. We became the storm." And as the galaxy turned slowly, systems crumbling like dry leaves, the silent fleet expanded its web. The council still existed, but its power was nothing more than an echo. Earth no longer needed to ask for a seat at the table. It had built its own throne, carved in silence, hidden in the void. Humanity had not been erased from history. It had become the shadow that history would forever remember. The galaxy had exiled Earth, but it was the galaxy that now lived under the shadow of humanity.